All right, I'm Ray Kaderli here with Keith Bean at his home in under construction. Tell us a little bit about you, this project, and how it came to be. And you've got a beautiful view out back and then a beautiful home inside. What was the genesis and the backstory of this whole project?
Well, we found this property probably about 6 years ago. It's a 7-acre parcel. It's adjoining the property that we live on now, which is a farm that's been in Katie's family for some time. And so we bought this property and been dreaming on it ever since. And I've been studying natural building for a lot of years, and this was a dream of ours both to build a natural home. And we landed on hempcrete, and particularly this hemp block. And so we were able to get a loan to build this, and so we started about a year ago, and with excavation, and this is where we are now.
And so we're just finishing up the block phase right here that we're touring, and then now a lot of folks find hempcrete and hemplime through the natural building space, and so then it's a matter of now hemplime, then how? And so there's there's hand cast, spray applied, block, panels, and then you started looking into all of those. And then what were some of the deciding points that you've made about going with block? And then we'll talk a little bit about more some of the details as we go through the tour.
Right, and so I like the monolithic character of the cast in place. But we are in the southeast, and so I was thinking that it would be good to have something that was pre-cured, and we landed on this product. And when we go inside, we can see a cross section of it where they're interlocked. It comes from it's the Biosys block from HempblockUSA or HempBlock International, and we like the fact that it locks in together and it creates a monolithic wall. There's no air penetration, and there's no need for mortar. That's another key
it's
thing.
A mortarless system.
Mortarless system. And as most of your viewers already know, it's hempcrete or hemplime is not load bearing. So there are steel members that are channeled into this system that carries the load of the weight of the roof. The weight of the roof, and then these are interlocked around that.
Well, if you'll just pan along here, and you'll see some of the beautiful steel work, and then I'll let you turn all the way back around and enjoy this view that is just a different view in all different seasons and one of the highlights of the property. And then we can go inside and continue on and learn more about some of these details and how they work. So, Keith, we're looking at some of these details inside, and in how the blocks are not the load-bearing part of the structure, but we do have some of these exposed steel beams that create the strong wall scenario. But then we can look at those over here. I'll let you talk about those, as well as this cross section of the wall,
right,
about how that actually works and what it's like to put it together. And just it's possible. It's as simple as it sounds.
It's doable, yeah. So you can see that there's some of the exposed steel in this stud walled section. This steel brace goes all the way through to the foundation below the first floor. And they're spotted all throughout the wall, and they are the load bearing portion of the system. It's essentially a post and beam situation where you have steel posts in most cases, some wood posts as well that are also embedded in the wall, and then you have beams that are also concealed in the wall system. And this is a good example of a sort of a hidden lintel within this block there, and this also shows this interlocking system, which you may not be able to see in that angle, but you can see it maybe over here.
And so when you've got this tongue and groove, what you're telling me is one of the appeals to you was that you wanted to have that monolithic quality, but with the prefabricated scenario.
Exactly.
To where you're in the South, it gets humid and muggy. You don't want to wait on that to cure. This comes prefabricated and cured.
Exactly.
But when it comes together in this tongue and groove scenario, you've got a weather barrier, an air barrier. Now we're on an interior wall,
sure,
but this is the same on the exterior wall. And so you've got all of that. There's no mortar joint, so you don't have a thermal bridge off your mortar joint, But then now this is encapsulating one of these steel sections. And so tell us about how you just sawed this in half, split it, and then put it back together once you took out the scenarios on that.
Exactly.
That's done with just a normal chainsaw.
Yeah, we did a lot of battery powered and electric powered chainsaws, and yes, you can see that these have been split. And so it's this, like I said, the steel goes all the way to the foundation. So the steel was here before any of it. So we have to work around that. There are scenarios where we built a column with the blocks, with the voids, and we put in a steel post afterwards. And so we did both of those, and that basically makes for a lot less cutting, because you basically just build the wall and then drop the post in later.
So some of the blocks come with that hole made to receive.
That's right.
And that's, I think we have an example of that right over here, where you were saying this one, these blocks have that already cut out and to accommodate this coming into it. So you were able to put the blocks first, then the steel. Some of them come to where you cut it after the fact and put the steel in. But either way, it's a simple scenario. You just have to have the frame and accommodate for the frame.
And then the final part of that is that void that column is in gets filled with a perlite mix that we made here on site, and then so that it becomes a solid connection without any voids.
And that's what's holding these up overhead. So these aren't just floating blocks, they're actually secured.
That's right.
They've got the porcupine effect of that key with into your header. And then these were, this is where a lot of your interior walls are the hempcrete. But then this is something you're going to finish up with lath, and then you've got some of your walls that are also wood, so that you can accommodate wiring and all of those things.
Correct.
Tell us about that and this transition.
Well, we didn't have enough blocks to go all the way to the ceiling, which we would have liked to be able to do that, but we were on a budget, and this is what we could afford to bring in. And so we decided to fill this up with a stud wall. It's actually going to benefit us because, like you said, we are going to be able to chase a lot of our wiring through here and some of our plumbing. And we're going to do a traditional wood lath and continue the earth and plaster from below all the way to that, so that finish will look monolithic in its appearance.
Yeah. So your finish will be one homogeneous look.
Correct. Yeah.
But then you've got the functionality of these in between. You've got the functionality of chasing wires and plumbing and everything that you need as far as your mechanicals. And then you've got the sound barrier and the thermal barrier from one room to the other. So it's just kind of a best of all worlds.
It's a good solution, yeah.
Super. Tell us about your details on running some of the chases. You can pick this one. I know we've got one here. We've got the plumbing in there.
Sure.
And then one of the things that I thought was interesting, and you can start with this, but the wood bucks for your doors and windows, this is a wood to metal screw, a lot like what you would use on building out a trailer and putting the floor on the trailer. It's not something you normally see in a carpentry scenario.
Right.
So tell us what made the carpenters not lose their mind when you're doing something like this, other than the fact that you're doing a lot of it.
Yeah, sure. It's sort of we're learning as we go, and the primary function of these window bucks and door bucks is in any other conventional home is like you want to have the windows secured to something real, and so although you could attempt to attach them to the hemp, you would be putting the wind load and the daily use load on that hemp, and it's not really designed for that. But we have the steel. On either side of almost every window, we have these steel members that are supporting the post and beam structure, and we were able to use long steel tap screws to secure these window bucks to the steel. And then while we're here, we did this similar thing with the electrical outlets. There are other ways to key it into and use mesh or metal plates or whatever, but we felt like especially for the outlets, it would be important to have those attached again to something solid like steel, or in some cases wood posts. And then as far as chasing the wires go from there, we got pretty proficient with chainsaws, electric chainsaws, and so some of the better block cutters could cut a block in 20 different ways to fit the unique
Show us
situation.
the artwork on the plumbing in here. This
Right.
is amazing.
Yeah, so then
So this plumbing is in the wall, and then this wall is so thick, you don't need to wrap, or now these are drain lines for sure, but if it were a supply line, you probably wouldn't even need to wrap this unless it was somebody trying to get you to do something to code that you really didn't need to. But tell us about how y'all went about this little bit of artwork, because I
Right.
think this is tidy.
it is. It's very cool, and this literally just happened today, so it's really fortuitous. This was our first foray into how this is going to work. Most of our plumbing, in a lot of cases, it's going to be in the joist bays up above or in the stud walls, but there's a few cases where we had to figure out how to make it go into the wall, and so our plumber just laid this out, said this is how I want it to look. I grabbed a electric chainsaw and just whipped this out, and just there's nothing securing these except as the plumber said, this joint right here, there's no way this can go up and down at all, and we've made it tight enough to where these kind of snapped in to that channel, and we could put a couple straps on it if we wanted to, but we will ultimately put the earthen plaster over this, probably run a little bit of a strip of lath over that just for extra measure.
Yeah, we were talking about the different types of lathing scenarios. Right. You're going old school above where you've got the larger runs. You can use that fiberglass mesh.
Fiber
you can
mesh
use a
lath,
metal
yep.
lath in here. And then these are for your lighting, correct?
Right, and these will be a little bit of where we were able to put outlets on steel. So there actually is steel in this section of the wall, so we could make this one attached directly to steel, but when you start getting into lighting design, it's something you want to light where it needs to be. So we're going to do a little bit of experimenting with how to secure a box. It's not the same as an outlet where you're pulling on that outlet and you have to make sure that it's solid. So I made these very tight fits, so we're gonna be able to get those electrical boxes to fit in there. Maybe use some adhesion, like maybe possibly even this foam, just to lock them in there so that they're secure. And then ultimately we'll have to chase those as well to the switches. So we'll probably go up with these so we can get the wiring into the ceiling bay.
I always joke that nobody comes on a hemp build and doesn't become an inventor, and that's one of the things that you're very talented. You're handling this project as the GC as well as it's your own, and so as far as just figuring it out, these are things coming together. These are building materials. You don't have to know everything, and then there's nothing that you can't figure out. It's not like you're going to get stuck.
Yes.
And so it's just a process along the way. Tell us about how you're transitioning from to your rafter bays up in here, and then what your selection was for up in the roofing section.
You mean specifically for the insulation and things like that?
Yeah, how you're making this transition. I didn't know if you had any vented soffits or if those were closed off. I see you've got the bird stops up there. How does this transition from the wall to your rafter bay up here? And then y'all are speccing in the hemp wool, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we'll fill the 10-inch bays with 2 layers of the hemp wool. We're excited about this because we're going to put the 5.5-inch layer in first, and that'll go as soon as the metal roof is finished, which will be hopefully next week. We'll be able to put that in, install that, then the electrical can go below that, And then so we get the electrical all in and kind of out of the way. Then we can come in with the 3.5 inch to fill the rest of that bay, and all the wiring is basically out of the way. No one's having to notch around the wiring. It's just going to be sandwiched between those two layers. So that's
nice.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
And you're not having to, if you're having to wrestle it, it's just you're pulling the sandwich apart and you're putting the sandwich back. You're not having to cut or do or anything like that.
Yeah, there won't be any notching, and so we can get that 5.5 inch layer in before the electrician bores their hole, so they'll know exactly where their chase is going to be, and it's going to be flush with that first layer. Because this is supposed to beam construction, there's a beam that's sort of hidden within this wall, and that's carrying the load of these rafters down.
Now is it a wooden beam?
It is. It's a wooden beam
on a metal saddle.
Essentially, yep. We've got
a lot like what we had out on the front porch.
All of the, and you can actually, if you turn around, you can see the steel framing. How it almost everywhere in the house, the posts are steel, and the beams are wood, and so even the ones that you can't see.
And these strong walls are just monsters. And so you've got this monstrosity that is just so strong and holding so much weight, and then there's a whole lot of nothing in between, so you've got the room to play with what you're doing on your installation on that.
Sure.
So that's fantastic.
Our engineer is a commercial. It's pretty clear by the plans, and everybody's looked at it. It's a commercial engineer, so everything's probably a little overbuilt, which I'm happy with that.
Oh yeah, you're on the side of the hill.
Yeah.
You know, if anything goes wrong, you're going down big, and you want this thing to stay in place
for sure
and hold upright. So let's go on downstairs and take a look at some of the details down there.
Sure. Yeah, it might be worth mentioning the fact that there's a concrete foundation wall, and although it wasn't in the plan, it wasn't in the design. It was my choice to create this electrical chase basically around the whole thing.
No, which chase is that?
So that's just this stud wall. This stud wall, like I said, it wasn't originally in the design, but my thinking was, how are you going to get electrical outlets around this foundation wall, which is on three sides? It's a 10-foot wall, and it's on three sides of the house. Of course, of the uphill side, it works. It acts as a retaining wall, and also the exterior wall. The designer made a lot of natural light. We haven't had any problem working without lighting.
There's no lights, and you're not tripping over anything.
No, on a very dark day, if we have a cloudy, really dark day, we'll break out a work light for a particularly dark spot. But even in the basement here, daylight basement, we've got plenty of lighting, and it just made sense to me to add this stud wall throughout the whole length of the concrete wall, so that we can chase plumbing and wiring. And
people are trying to get away from concrete and do stuff, but you can't get away from doing stuff like this. And this is where it has to be to keep that part of the hill from coming down through the house.
Right.
And so this is where it needs to be. You've got something like this to accommodate it, like what people would be used to. Tell us about the foundation here, about how this came about and what the details are, because you've eliminated most of the concrete that would typically be used, and all you have is your beams to hold the load, and that carries all the way up through to the roof.
Right.
Tell us about this and these beams that you've got.
Well, first of all, this foundation wall allows us to be below grade, and so you can really feel a difference just even from this room to that room. So besides the fact that this is our panic room, because we are basically underground here, it's a very cool room, and it, even in the wintertime when you're trying to warm up the downstairs, it's going to be the ambient temperature of that 57 degrees or whatever on the subterranean temperature, and it's going to be a lot easier to warm up. We're going to have a radiant heat flooring for this lower level, and we just love the idea of being bermed in the hill for that reason, for those thermal properties.
Yeah, it gives you a good head start, whether you're heating or cooling.
Exactly.
You're heating or cooling a little bit instead of a lot of transition, and then that gives you a lower delta of the difference that you're trying to bring, because you've already got it here. And then now, what kind of steel do we have in our footers?
So this, again, back to our commercial engineer.
House isn't falling down.
This whole hill could wash away, and this footer is still going to be here. And so it's you can sort of tell that it's a grid. And so instead of just being a perimeter footer, it's a grid of steel encased rebar encased channels, or whatever you want, formwork. And so the back of the house is completely connected to the front of the house in one monolithic pour, essentially.
Nice.
And
nice.
It's about a 2-foot footer. We don't really have a frost heave issue here. We don't really have a frost line. Of course, it is generally still recommended 16 to 24 inches. And we had the concrete guys form this up above grade when they graded it, and then they dug shallow form trenches and then built that footer above that, and that allowed us to put the drain plumbing, which you can see coming out here. I mean, if you could imagine that this was poured on grade, below grade, then we would be doing a lot of digging.
So we're talking about the foundation, how you were able to get a lot of the concrete out, how you made the footers, and how you left this gravel out until later. So ergonomically, you're working at something that's a little bit higher up. So where I'm standing with the gravel wasn't there.
Right.
So you could do all of your plumbing details.
Right.
You could put your steel into the concrete to accommodate receiving these upright beams.
Correct.
And then now you're just filling in the gaps, and then so you've got your vapor barrier underneath, and so now finish that off and transition us into the clay floor or the adobe floor.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we're going to do a radiant heat system in here. And that's going to cover this whole floor. It's about 1,400 square feet on this level, and so we're going to put 2 inches of it's called crete heat, and it's designed to accommodate 1/2 inch to 8-inch tubing. So it locks together, and so we'll have an entire floor covered in that foam, vapor barrier, the foam. And then the tubing, it kind of has these little nipples that hold that, and you can run really quickly, snap that stuff in, and run. The whole floor will be covered in that.
Almost like a manifold.
It is.
Yeah.
But they're basically, I think they're 2x4 square of the 2-inch foam. They lock together. And then you run the tubing on that. It's a lot quicker than having to do zip ties to a grid or any of that stuff. And then it gives you that R7 or R10. I think it's R10 of foam underneath it. And then in this section, we're actually, because this is the mechanical room, and there's a laundry room that's adjacent to this, we're going to actually pour 4 inches of concrete on top of that. So in this mechanical section where we have a floor drain and everything, we're going to go ahead and put concrete in there. The bathrooms and the laundry rooms will also have that. And then the other 2/3 of this floor we'll put a road base over the tubing. And then we're going to put an earthen floor to bring it up to the height of that same that concrete.
That's going to be a fantastic feel.
I'm really looking forward to having the earth connection in this in this part of the house, and I think it'll be a good solution for heating this whole floor.
Now tell us about the different types and shapes of blocks. You said there were just the normal ones that are in our big run areas like this, to where if you're filling in, it's what the tongue and groove scenario, like what you would expect. And then there are some that are already have the hole pre-done in it to receive the upright supports.
Correct.
And then there's some of these that are in the shape of a U. Tell us about those that are like over our headers, and I know you had some in the window up here, and how you had that detail come together.
So all the blocks, there's all those three types of blocks. They're all the same dimension. They all have the tongue and groove on the bottom, and all except for the U blocks, which won't have one on the top. So the U blocks are typical of a regular CMU block, and the way they work is that you are able to chase a lintel or a header from connection from steel to steel on either side of this door opening, and then you basically hide it inside this U block. And then over here, again, I mentioned that there is steel, so this would be a column block. So it's basically this entire block here is solid, and then there's a column section in this one, and so you stack these blocks as you go, and then you drop that post down into that. It keys into the steel in the footer there, and then you're able to attach that lintel to that. And
so this is, and this accommodates a regular wood
double 2x8. That's
so your header is the same. It attaches to the steel with a wood to metal fastener.
Correct.
And then that's the same as over here. Tell us about this detail, if we go back around the horses over here, on how this was a little bit different size and you were able to accommodate it. What I want people to know is that if it's not perfect out of the box, so to speak, you can make it perfect just like you would with any other material.
Right.
If you need to cut it, this, that, and the other, you can do stuff.
This is somebody at one of our workshops called it a danger block. And all that is a mending plate, a truss plate, and screwed to the backside.
I'm seeing the invention.
And so it's essentially a rasp, and even though it's all bent up, and it's still really effective. And so you take that piece of hemp that that doesn't quite fit just like you want it, and you just give it a little quick run over, and it's a very usable material. And so if it's a large area that you need to adjust, you do it with the chainsaw. And so you can see here where this window buck needed to be a little taller than that block, and it turns out that this block above is actually a lintel block. It's one of those U blocks. And so we were able, after the fact, after the lintel is in, after we've poured the perlite Portland mix, which is mostly perlite, just enough Portland to bind it all together, and that's all cured, then it's self-supporting. And then once that was cured, we were able to trim back what we didn't need and get it actually very close to where that lintel is within the wall, and then we could screw our buck to the lintel. There's another piece of timber that's keyed into the tongue or the groove side of this, and that allows us to screw down into that. And then, of course, on the either side, you're going into the steel.
And so this was all workshopped up for you through HempBlock International, and then came here. They workshopped you through that. Tell us a little bit about the engagement in the process. I wanted folks to know that even if it's not perfect and you've got 4 blocks that are supposed to be this way, you need to turn them that way. Just like with wood, just like with anything else, you can make it happen.
Correct.
And then, so it's not the end of the world if you need to fix something or adjust something. You just have to have that job site decision-making capability to do that.
Yep.
And then what I like is they come together and they've got the design and the engineering. So when you engage, tell us about that onboarding as a potential client. When you reached out to them, you knew it was something that you wanted, didn't have to cure in this southern humidity, and you wanted something ready. How was that first engagement, and then the process on through to workshop?
Right, yeah, they have a really great team, and basically we handed them a rough floor plan that we found that we liked, and we handed it to them. And there were things we didn't like, and he basically, with their architect, very affordably, he redrew that floor plan into this plan, and so we went back and forth with that, and they were really helpful in creating this vision for this house. And then again, very helpful with all. They also with all that process, and then they also helped us through the hemp block company, sourced an engineer who was familiar with the blocks and was able to translate that pretty picture into something that the steel person could work with, and that we could engineer on site.
So it wasn't just here buy a couple of ocean containers full of blocks
Right.
and bless your heart, and we hope you have a good project.
Exactly.
They were helping you all the way
They
through
were.
the
They were very
design.
helpful, and this is. It turns out the very first hemp block project of this company in the United States. I think there's another one in Colorado coming up here this spring, but and also the big plus will be when we can actually manufacture these here in the
Right,
States. Unfortunately, they're imported from France. We decided to be the pioneer and make it happen. We took a hit because it's more expensive to ship it than it is to buy these blocks themselves. So we just decided that was our due to pay or to make it happen.
Well, you're helping America catch up. We don't like being behind France or anybody in anything.
There you go.
And then we know that they're making them here, and I know there's a lot of interest in fabricating some sort of scenario. People are looking at blocks, people are looking
Sure.
at panels, people are looking at combinations and connecting all of the above. And it's folks like you that'll jump in there and take something that's like, look, we know we can do this.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and do it. And then now, when y'all were pulling the trigger on that and saying yes, tell us about engaging with a lender. I know y'all have a construction loan,
Right.
just like anybody would expect to build a house.
Sure.
Tell us about that, and then that's another thing that I want people to know is like this isn't the end of the world because you're building with hemp. You can go to the bank, you can go to
Yeah.
the mortgage company, you can go to the insurance company. What was that like?
Well, it was really helpful to have a really good drawing, a really good plan that we had, and engineer drawings with it. And so every bank's going to want an appraisal. That's where it starts.
Yeah. Is it an asset?
Exactly. Is this going to be something that can be resold? And so the appraisal process was not too unlike any other appraisal process. They had somebody, it might have taken them a little bit longer. If someone's trying to appraise a straw bale house, for example, they need to find comparables. And so basically based on the square footage, based on the fact that it's a block house, it's a modern house, it's in a great location, they said, yes, this house has a value of X, and we were able to borrow based on that. And again, we had good plans, and we
There's
had
the
something that we could present to the bank that they were able to take it seriously and recognize that this is no different really than any other loan.
And they didn't have to take on the risk. Having those engineer stamp plans takes the risk off of that lender and puts it on the engineer. That's what engineers are for.
Sure.
And so we need to use them. It's not a scapegoat scenario, but it's like that is their job and what they do. And then all insurance companies and banks do, they buy and sell risk. And if we can do things like that, having a good set of plans, having an appraisal, letting the other professions come to the table, do the part that they do to where the insurance companies and the lenders can say, I am purchasing a reasonable risk in this loan or in this policy, and then just let them do what they do, and then it's all about the risk. Well, I've enjoyed the tour here today. Now, I know you're putting a lot out there on TikTok, and you've got a lot of views. Ours are not as exciting and thrilling. If people want to learn more and get to know you, how would you like people to follow up? Some people text message is fine, or is like, I don't want anything except an email. How can people find you and get in touch with you more?
Yeah, well, so we branded ourselves Hemp Healthy Home. Mm-hmm. We are the Hemp Healthy Home. So you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and TikTok, and even YouTube. Which there's no content there yet, but we have that sort of domain even on YouTube, which is Hemp Healthy Home. So
nice. Well, until we get a chance to see you on stage as a musician, we're in near all the heart of where American music comes together. How often are you going to be playing on stage once this project is done?
Well, really, it's just a couple of guys that get together once a week and play at the moment. So for us, we just love playing, and we love to play together and learn new songs. And occasionally somebody wants to hear us, and we'll go have a gig. But it's something that's really great. We listen to a lot of music while we're here, and the whole crew are knowledgeable about music. So a lot of breakout discussions about music and while we're here. But
well, we were throwing out the idea of building a hemp recording studio. So if anybody's watching and wants to put together a recording studio, I think this would be a fun next project to do. And so with that, we'll wrap it up. And then any questions that you want to relay or find, you can always reach out to either one of us, and we'll be happy to help you have a successful hemp project. We'll see you on the next one.